get started here tonight, folks, because we got a lot to talk about and not a ton of time. So just a little housekeeping as we normally do. For the webinar we got going on, we'll be doing live tonight with the guest. And then for everybody that's joining us, you have the chat button down below. You can keep going all night long, banter, nice messages. Just remember, Jen can kick you out. And then for questions that you do want answered, it's really easy for us if you hit the question and answer button and you throw questions in there. We can go right through that as we're going or at the end. Make sure we get to as much of that as possible. But that's about it.
If you guys want to chat with each other, hit all panelists and attendees. Just a reminder.
Yep. Just make sure you get your little chat selection set up so everybody can yell back and forth at each other. But yeah, I think that's it. Oh, and it will be recorded and emailed out after, as we did with the last couple. But enough of that. Thank you for joining us. We got someone tonight that I'm really pumped to talk to. Man of many talents. I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit and talk about them all. But Mark Burns, what's up, big guy? How are you? Thank you.
Thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah,
it's definitely a little weird coming in from this side of the mic.
Yeah, a little different for you.
Board. But yeah, I'm Mark Burns. I kind of got everything started rolling with the crew at SVS podcast. Through there, I mean, we're all just a bunch of Musky guys. It's all we lived and breathed it for the last few years, and it grew from there. And the guests that we've talked to and people we've had on, we've just learned so much and got to know so many people through that. This opportunity came with Urban Fly Company, and from there, it's just been rolling every couple days, and it just seems like just more is happening. And now as a couple years have passed, it's just getting bigger and a lot more coming in through this. This year's going to be a big year all the way around. What's going on kind of with our crew here in Western PA. It's going to be fun. We got a lot coming.
We're excited about it. That's for sure. I mean, if you guys are joining us, ladies and guys, and have not heard of the podcast, definitely give that a shout. It's hilarious. You guys get, like you said, some awesome names. Really,
Been a lot of good people to talk to.
Yeah,
We've learned a ton.
Yeah, it's a good blend of, feeling like you're shooting the shit, but there's some good stuff in there. So definitely check that out. But yeah, tell us about like Urban Fly, kind of how it got going on your end, and where it's kind of at today, where it's going. What's the background?
Well, I guess the whole start of it starts back with everybody else Musky, Bowen. I mean, zero to hero, watching that, seeing I fell in love right off the bat with the Buford. I guess the more simple materials, the better they're done, the more beautiful it is to me. And with that, it's no different with Musky. Just because they're, big badass fish doesn't mean we can't tie elegant flies for them. And I think you even mentioned that in the film. That's kind of what's cool about it. So from there, it just kind of grew with that pattern and fished it for, a few years before I realized each one of these patterns all has its own purpose, but they can all be tweaked to fit a little bit of a niche. And that's kind of what I started doing with just even from the single Buford, and then it worked up to the double, the minnow, and all the flies, just the concept of how I tie them and adjustments with the heads and the hooks. So every little bit of it's I had a situation and tried to figure out how to put a fly in it. Here's where the fish is going to be. Here's where he's going to ambush from. If it's a current situation, here's where the current's coming from. So what did I have to do to build this fly? And that's essentially where it's gotten to right now, that all the flies I'm selling and tying and just everything I'm doing is all built off of a concept and a reason that there's a reason I'm doing it. It's not just, this is the pattern, here's how you tie it. It's been tweaked, it's been adjusted to fit a specific purpose.
And that's what, I think is so cool about it, what I want to dig into tonight, because that's it's not just another Buford, and I think there's a lot of that, and that's kind of, pays homage to Brad himself for the original design, but every little detail of these, and then when you start stacking them up next to each other, they're the same over and over and over again. So can you kind of, what can you get into on that? Work us backwards from that situation into those design elements, into construction, into kind of performance of how it works, and how that seems to be your kind of thing with the fly tying style.
So I guess everything essentially, first and foremost, is going to start with the hook. The platform you're working with, how much material you can fit on there, and what that hook's actually going to do when that material's on there. So for a lot of the flies, the river, the minnow, I'm going to use the PR320 stinger hook. It's a heavier gauge.
Yep,
It's going to keel a little bit better in current, and it's going to get down a little bit quicker. So I guess where do I start with that? Let's start with the river. So what you have is essentially I took the Buford, played with all the different hooks. Once I got with Arex and knew that that's who I was sticking with, that's who all my flies are going to be tied with, PR320 was the first hook that came. So the Buford itself, the way I was tying it was on more of a longer shank. It was on, it's like a mustad.
Yep.
J style hook. It's like a big 6 fly. You get a little more room to play with. So a much bigger profile fly. At that point in time, I spun the hair the whole way around the hook. That fly itself, pushed a little more water. It was a little bit harder to get down. It wasn't fishable really at all in current or in like rivers, unless you were throwing a heavy full sink line. And then the issue you ran into there is you're going to bury that line, or you're going to bury that fly, and it's not going to work. So from there, it's like, okay.
Was that mainly because of the hook right there? Was that like the big difference maker in going to the 320? Or was that just...
I mean, I guess with the hook is it added such a bigger platform that you put more on there, and I guess it's a concept that it took from it that it just. And at that point too, everybody kind of had the thing that everything's got to be massive with them, and I think the more we get into it, the more we see it's not the case at all. But that, I guess that fly there, here's what I needed to do. I need that fly to hit the water as soon as it hits. At that point, I only have to give it a second or two, and I can go ahead and start inputting action into it. Well, with a fly like that, as soon as I fly at the water with a full sink, you're waiting and waiting and waiting. Next came tying top and bottom. That's what allowed kind of the whole kind of scheme of it to work to where each of these flies can adapt from it. So instead of spinning around the hook, even from tying, like here's an all-white double fly.
And just, Mark, I don't want to slow you down too much, but just for folks that don't know exactly, we're going to have some folks on here that have fished your flies, probably caught monsters, and we'll have some fish, or people that are just some fish. Some people that are just like learning Buford heads. So just when you're talking about it, just break it down a little bit more, maybe in how it's usually done versus why you're doing it that way.
Yep. So that's with this fly here.
Yep.
Even though it's all white, everything's all the same. They're not spun around. So this hair isn't completely spun. I don't like set on the top, make a couple wraps, spin it the whole way around.
Yep.
I take half the amount of hair, I set it on the top, make your wraps, spin the hook over, do the same on the bottom.
So no reverse tying either. No reverse tying.
Oh yeah, it's reverse tied. Yeah, absolutely it is. Yep. So it's building that more of a vertical profile. So yeah, once I get the top and the bottom, I'll pull down tight. I take it back a little bit, just so I have a nice flat, even platform to work with. Cut off all my fibers there. And then once I push it over, I tie over the top. I don't do a thread dam in the front. So once you tie over the top, as long as you take it back before you cut them fibers off there, you have a nice flat spot. So once that thread cinches over, it's on a nice flat bare area there. You have enough area to pull down, make 3-4 wraps beside each other. So then you have a nice flat area to start putting your materials on.
Yep.
Which segues into one question we're going to get into is the consistency of them. That's the biggest start of it. 3 steps before you get to where that material is, you need that step to be done right. So like when you start to fly off, I'm just going to have a typical straight, laid back, bucktail style. And you build off of there with your flash and your feathers. Then once you start doing the reverse wound from there, that's where you want to make sure that, you don't just cinch the top and bottom, flare it, push it over, and then pull over. Because all it's going to do is shoot some butts up through the top. It's going to be inconsistent in there. And the feathers are going to kink and turn. Same with the flash on the top. So it gives you a nice, even platform to work with. And then as you build your way up, it builds it, instead of being like a circle, it's more of a vertical body of the bucktail, which then allows you to impart the action in a different manner. It's doing the same thing that the other, a typical bucktail fly with a big hunk of bucktail spun around, then where it spins the whole way around. Then you do your thread dam. Just essentially how they, I don't know, majority of people, from what I understand, do.
Yep.
That's kind of like what we all started on, or should I say?
Yep.
We all started doing it that way.
Well, a couple things too. One, it seems like, at least looking at them, it allows you to control color differently too, because you're not trying to blend and spin. You can kind of layer colors a little bit differently and really control where their placement comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what are you seeing out of how it fishes that's different?
Well, and that's where with having the vertical profile like that, you get, okay, so let's take, kind of like beat around the bush with all of this. I think there's a lot of information to cover. That's the tough part, is how do you stay on one subject with it? Yep. So back to the beginning of it, let's say the reason for, the river. So let's say that you have a little bit of a current or any situation, you're coming into a bank. The fly is going to hit. It's going to have to take a second or two to get down and sink down in. The fish is going to be in an ambush spot from there. How far and how much does that fly need to get down before it's in the vision? And at that point, or if you're starting to strip, how far out away from the bank is it? And are you even getting in front of that fish?
Yep.
So let's say you take a bigger Buford, it doesn't get down like as quick as a river will. You may be 5-6 foot off the bank, in which case you're out past that fish. So with this, as soon as it hits the water, you can have an intermediate line. That fly, it's starting. So whether you can kind of tell or not with that, that's a river head compared to a lake head. So you can kind of see the densities in them. Yeah. So once that hits, it's immediately already taken under the water. It's starting down in. You're going to get a little bit of input from the current. So at that point, just small, nice, easy taps with like an intermediate line on short pops, the fly is going to work just like a glide bait going through there. So if that hits, and it hits right on the bank like you want it to, within a second or two, them first two strips, they're in the vision of the musky.
Yep.
So how many times does that fly hit the bank on the opposite side, and it's almost swirled on immediately, and you get that flash? If that fly's just sitting, hovering there, they're watching it, they see it, they know what's going on. So that first couple strips, he's not really interested at that point because he got to see it. But when that fly hits the water, boom, you start stripping, he's right on it. So it kind of that's what the idea with the river was. You tie it sparse, top and bottom, so that it has the vertical profile with a fairly sparse head. It's really only got about 3 pencil sizes in that. That's all that it is. Nothing even up to a Sharpie. So that fly is able to, with small little actions, you don't have to get hard on it now. We'll get to like a lake head with that. But you get hard 8, 10, 12-inch strips into it. Yeah. It's not going to do what a lake head will. Now, a lake head's going to be separate, and that's going to be perfect for a situation like that. But this fly allows you to kind of work that. This allows you to work a current river situation with a Buford head, and it allows it to fish now and immediate.
And a couple things. One, for everybody paying attention, what material? Are you tying the same materials for both, or are you changing that at all?
No, it's all the same materials. So when I switch between a lake and a river, it's going to be exactly the same. I'm going to go to a little bit of a thicker, heavier feather on the lake. I'm going to be more dense with the bucktail. In the head, then I'm going to go to 4 stacks that are borderline Sharpie size.
And you're strictly deer belly. We get asked that question a lot. What material do you tie? Deer body. Yep.
Yes, deer body. Yep. Which can be a royal pain.
On the acquisition side,
On the acquisition side, it's a royal pain. On the consistency side, it's perfect because every time you're getting exact, and that's hard to do with natural, but you're only going to get that exact for that patch. Yep. Once that patch is gone, then you're searching for that next one that's going to be good enough to tie enough flies with, because it's a treat to get consistent quality with it. But once you do, you're at least consistently tying the same fly.
Can we? This might be. I don't know. I find it interesting, but if you could just one more time, if you didn't already, just can you walk us through, and then we'll go get into the lake stuff. How you're constructing your Buford Riverhead, because you kind of talked about the 3 Sharpie sizes. You're not striking it, but just one more time for everybody, like what's the
with the
recipe?
This is perfect. So you can see stack on the top, the laning right for that. Yeah, same one you're holding in your hand.
Yeah.
Stack on the top, and there's a stack on the bottom. That's both again roughly this pencil, like pen pencil thin.
Yep.
And the same with the stack on the front, and then that one spun. So there's not a ton of there's not a ton of hair up there. But when you take like a lake head, you can see like density size. There's 4 clumps in there that are roughly the size of a Sharpie. So yeah, it's going to be almost pen pencil size top, 1 bottom, 1 spun in the front.
Yep.
And again, play with it too, because the way you tie your material in, if you go a little bit thicker, you have a little bit of a crunchier, heavier fiber or bucktail, it's going to adjust that too a little bit. And if you notice you maybe, hey, I want a little bit heavy on that one, don't skip on the head then. Make sure you give yourself enough on the head because it will adjust that fly.
Yep.
So a lot of that's going to depend on the density you tie with. In practice, play with them. And that's just, the more you fish that fly, you see the difference it makes. And you can always trim them back a little bit or cut them. But it's hard to kind of, add or do much more with that. But if you go too light with them, you're done there. It's going to fish like an unweighted minnow or nothing on it.
Have you, are you pretty strictly deer body? Have you messed around with anything else? Because that's
I'll use the
another
bucktail.
variable. Yeah.
But yeah, I will use some. If the bucktail at the bottom is what I like it and it's got the fiber texture I want from it, I will, but it's rarely. I try to just stick with that. Yep.
Okay.
But I guess then we didn't hit on is in a river situations like the minnows. Because the minnows are tied on the same hook. They're the same size, but they're a non-Buford head. So there I do use, they're keel weighted in the back. And they also have a little bit of synthetic material. Now that's an EP because that's going to hold water retained. So that head's heavy. They're going to work kind of back and forth here. So you got keel weight in the back with a little bit of water retaining synthetic underneath your flash and feathers like you typically would.
Yep.
The head, I've got about, it depends on each one, but 3 to 4 layers of UV on there. So the head's got some weight to it. If you drop that thing, it's going quick. So that keel weight in the back, along with the fiber, helps offset that balance. So then instead of it's fishing straight up and down, it still does get the action. But as soon as that fly hits the water, the head shoots straight down. And as soon as you ride its side, it's going to follow the action of the line. So whatever way that line goes, that leader's going to start to turn a certain way. And myself, I use fast hatch number 3s. So that fast hatch is going to turn. That fly is always going to work back with that leader or with that line. So it's going to allow it to be erratic instead of going up and down.
Well, and again,
that makes a big difference. Snaps. If you use like a number 4 or 5 fast hatch, it's going to completely turn the whole action of any fly. Now, anyone that fishes straight leader to the fly, it's always going to fish true then. But I found like a fast hatch number 3 is the perfect snap that won't mess with the action of any fly. It's light enough and it holds enough.
And generally speaking, as long as it's a loop knot, a stay lock, or a fast hatch, it's you get better action with everything in that group than anything.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
These are also not spun either. It looks like because they're super tight and streamlined. So they're stacked mainly. Yep. Yeah, everything I tie is all stacked, unless it's getting into like a bucktail deceiver or something for other fish. All the musky flies are stacked. The other hidden benefit is it's just a little bit more straightforward to deal with. You don't have to.
Oh, it is. It takes more time though.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's one thing. I mean, I sell flies and I tie a lot of them. I spend a lot of time tying, and most people are conscious of time when doing that, but I'm really not. I am not. I want quality over quantity. And I just make sure I'm like, kind of like the tortoise with it. Just keep on trucking. As long as I just keep going and I don't, as long as the fly's in the water, you're going to catch fish. Kind of like that mentality. As long as you keep tying, you're going to get there. So I do take my time with them. They're not rushed through. And I kind of make sure that each section's done the way that it should, because it all adds up at the end to get the action you want. And if you overdo the back, it's not going to swim correctly.
I encourage people, if they're buying flies from you, just for the hell of it, they should buy 2 of the exact same, because they're going to come in a box and you're going to be able to count the freaking hair fibers and be like, it's that. It was, when we got them, it was pretty cool. So consistent. But we're swerving a bit off topic, which is okay, but let's. Yeah, do we have any questions on this? I do want to go back to lake stuff though.
Yeah.
Mark Grasswick's question, Jen?
Back up.
I do. With synthetic, oh, look at,
It's why they're used.
yeah, so Mark, we're getting some questions about the guinea feathers. Tell us about those.
Oh yeah.
Tell us about those, kind of why, what do you use them for?
Looks, honestly,
Make
it's
your
all
sexy
aesthetics.
looking?
All aesthetics, because I mean, right there typically is where like the gill plate is. So I guess it gives a definition to where the, just kind of that's where the head's at. It stops. That's where the front of your head starts. It's kind of your definition point there, and it really does add like a fish look. I just liked the guinea and stuck with it, and just I don't know, kind of always just kept with the guinea.
It's unique. Whenever I see it,
Signature.
signature. Whenever I see it, it's one. You think of one thing, one person. So it's pretty sweet. Do we have any-
I have to say, if I got that from anybody, that was definitely from Marlon Prince. Marlon was the one that I saw that had.
Yeah, you're right. Yep. He's got a
Actually,
couple
hold
of them. Yeah, he just posted a couple of them the other week.
You know, it doesn't even have the guinea on it. Actually, I was gonna say one like that, but it didn't have the. But yeah, he was the one I kind of saw that from initially. And I've stuck with it since then.
You got up for a second. Do we need to have a session on like fly tying chairs? Because I feel like you have a very specific chair design there.
Oh man, this is a gaming chair
Oh my
with a massage chair inside of it.
Wow.
And it is awesome.
I noticed a few details when you got up, and I was like, I gotta ask about that.
Yeah, I broke a couple chairs, and I was like, all right, I really need something that's gonna hold up for a while.
Yep.
That's an epic pro tip right there.
There's the pro tip from Mark Burns, everybody. Jen, do we have any more questions on
No,
this?
keep going.
Keep going. Okay. Yeah. So swerve back a little bit. We kind of talked about river. We kind of talked about the difference. Go a little bit deeper now on lakes, kind of the situations you're using them for, how the action changes maybe, and how
Yeah,
you
so
line them up a little bit differently.
with lakes, that's where I'm getting into. Typically, I'm throwing them with like a 450, 550 full sink line, and they're meant to get to a certain depth. So at that, what I'm doing is I'm figuring out where the fish are going to be. I mean, if I'm fishing up in shallow, they're going to hit, and I'm going to pretty much almost start stripping immediately. But what I like to do with them is I like to get in that, like, let's say like one lake that I fish a lot. You get a nice little shelf from 6 to 9 foot of water, and you have weeds that come up off. And with these, I can sink that down to whatever, like, let's say that weed line is coming up to like 5 foot. I can sink that down to 5 foot, bury my rod tip off the edge of the boat, and I can pretty much consistently work that fly and hover it right over top like a glide bait would, right over that weed line. And you can hook them fish right down into them weeds with that. And it works just as good right over structure, over logs, over rocks. But I mean, with that, you're able to count it down as typical. And then instead of like the short little pops you would make with like an intermediate that works like a glide bait, here you're going to almost be thinking that fly in your head. So you pull it, and let's say it's an 8-10 end strip. Just pop. You know what that fly is going to, how far it's going to go, and you're thinking in its head, okay, it's riding, it's going broadside. Then as it stops, and as you're doing it, you're just picking up that slack line. So as you feel like, okay, it stopped, that slack line picked up, then boom, then the next strip. And then that thing just works back. And then what I like to do too is, as it like will come to like a pause, almost give like a pop, 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 and then like boom, boom, boom. So that fly is like darting, and then pop, pop, and then that last one, it just turned broadside. And then that's when I just love to whack it. So it's just, you can really hold that fly and hover it at the same depth. It doesn't want to dive, it doesn't want to do anything, it'll just hover. Count it right to where you want it, and just, it stays in the strike zone so long. The extra buoyancy with the hair and the bigger body, where like if I threw a river there, it wouldn't do the same with that. It would just keep sinking the whole way down.
Right.
This will hang.
Yeah, there's many things in there, but one of the main things I think is more broadly, people like you're tying them very differently for certain situations.
I want to give that fish as many broadside profiles as I can
Right,
with it,
right.
and hang right there. I don't want it turning the whole way back around, and I don't want it kind of getting like half and diving. I want that fly, boom, even, right in front of its face. So you turn a glide bait, a big wooden glide bait, it doesn't turn and then just all of a sudden just head bob. That thing just stays sideways. That fish just broadside, and that's exactly like what we'll do with these. And each one adequately does the same thing, but you fish them a little bit differently.
Right.
The intermediate line with the river and small pops, and they'll work just exactly the same as the lakehead will with longer, it's shorter position points of it. They snap quicker, where the lake will be longer. But the nice part with the lake is you're pushing water and there's disturbance in there too. So you're getting feeling out of it along with the sight too.
Yep.
That head does push, it does to make some, they're going to feel that a lot more.
Yeah. No, I think that's super cool. I mean, we get asked, I think there's a lot of people that are getting out on the lake right now with the fly rods. Well, not right now, but just lately. It kind of went through this, it has to be a river era, and now it's like, wait a minute, there's fish in lakes. Some people, that's a good joke. But most of the flies that you see, you don't see them dialed, they're like, this swims this way. But you're the first one really right now, at least, marketing and talking about it that way. And I think that's super cool because it just, as a tire, you can take that back to the bench. Whether it's a different lake in a different city, in a different state, with different situations, you can make different micro adjustments like that. And that's the beauty of it. You can't do that as well with other lures or other types of things.
And that's something as probably spring progresses and I have the time to do so, I'd like to start putting a little more videos out there just showing how I operate. Because again, like we talked about, I built these flies for a reason as to how I fish, because I make sure everything that I sell, I fish exclusively. Well, here's why I did it. I need to do a little better job of kind of getting out to help too. So you can, but like you said, with the tying aspect, yeah, I mean, they're different hooks too. So there's different platforms and reasons at all.
Yeah.
All work behind it.
Yeah, well, and I think it gets lost sometimes today, at least in my opinion. People might disagree.
Wait, go back to what was that last thing that came up on there? Something, there's fish in lakes, but what?
Rivers are less pressured.
Oh yeah. That's probably true, at least in Wisconsin. But
oh yeah, and that's the same too in PA. But you'll find you're going to get fish that are they see that pressure differently. So the fly is something they haven't seen. So I mean, again, your lakes may be different.
No, we see that.
Because ours get the crap kicked out of, but there's no fly game at all there. So you go in right on top of them guys, and I mean, you're not going to have I'm not going to say you're going to go out there and catch 7-8 fish by any means, but I wouldn't doubt it at all that you can go out there and have good success on a lake. When you're thinking, boy, I'm just find the areas they're going to be, put the fly there. You'd be surprised. Yeah,
we have a little bit of that right here in Madison. We get a few of those lakes right downtown. They get the crap kicked out of them.
Yeah. But and I can't speak for that. I'm sure, pressure-wise, significantly higher on your end than it is here. We do get a good bit of people, but I can't imagine like you guys do.
They don't get a lot of flies. They get a lot of fishermen. That's about it. Question. A few. We got the podcast name. I saw that. To be clear, Mark uses deer body hair for Buford heads and not bucktail. Please confirm.
Correct. Very, very, very little amount of bucktail. Maybe like 2% of 98% body.
And that's only when that bucktail matches the characteristics of what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How much longer was that?
I was gonna say, typically with that, they're the ones that have they're wide, so you got like the little bit of the corners of the cheeks on there, and they got that little. You'll get like a couple good chunks off that. They're just perfect.
Yep. The ones that you're probably swearing about if you're looking to use it to reverse tie bodies. But here we go. How much longer does stacking versus swirling take, spinning, and does it use any more hair?
It doesn't use any more hair, no, but yeah, it takes probably 3 times as long. Because instead, it's not just like you got top and bottom, because you're cleaning for the top, you're cleaning for the bottom. And you do. I mean, yeah, it probably takes 3 times longer to do it. Yep.
But you feel like you have more control over where you're putting fibers with that?
I do. Yeah, I have more control. B, I definitely know if I try to make a river with a spun, it would be okay, but it still wouldn't swim quite the way I wanted. I mean, it would get probably 70% of the action, but it's not going to turn quite as snappy just because of the vertical profile of it.
Yep. We got a few more here while we're on them. So I assume, Mike, you're talking about the Buford style, but what tying characteristics promote a side-to-side action? Maybe just generally. Like when you're thinking about, general heads, bodies, weight. Just where am I going to get a side-to-side action out of versus maybe an
I guess
up-and-down action or a swim action?
the best way to think of it is going to be like a triangle. Think of the tail at the point of the triangle and the head at the flat spot. As you take them fibers and work them up a hook and you go a little bit thicker, a little bit thicker, a little bit thicker, that's going to start the turbulence that goes past the body. So once you put that head on there that's flat surfaced and buoyant, the weight of the line pulls it down, but the disturbance goes out around that, and that's what causes that head. So if it's all streamlined and even, there's really nowhere it's going to go but dead straight. So once you put that head on there and then you taper the body up, as soon as that, that water goes around that head, as long as it's tapered, it's going to ride that side to side. If it's dead straight, it's going to want to go dead straight. So it's all about where, the displacement of the water goes out around the fly that causes that side to side action. Plus two with like the minnow heads, like I said. With that, if you work it like a teeter-totter in the weight, so you got a lot of weight in the front, you got a little bit of weight in the back, it's working like a teeter-totter, it's going to want to follow where the line goes. As long as you're stripping that line, you're working out. If you're just going to pull that thing like this, it's not going to do nothing. You're going to rip that fly and you're going to get that line to move. That way, it's going to follow the consistency of where that is, and it's always going to work back and forth with it because that fly doesn't want to ride right there. So it's always wanting to, it's fidgety, it's ready to go. So it's easy for it to turn and move and jump and jack around. But a lake head, when you put that much hair in the top of it, and I saw one of the questions come across, it looks like it's so buoyant. When you put that much hair in there, that's what I was saying about like taking that strip and giving it a second because that line's down below the fly.
Yeah.
So when you're stripping, that head is starting to want to go down. And as it wants to come up, it's going, okay, so you're looking at it here, it's going in like this. And as it turns, it's wanting to kind of just do one of these, but it's because of the line pulling down, it doesn't allow it to head bob the whole way unless you go too quick. If you start going, pop, 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 then yeah, it's just going to want to ride up. But as long as you give that enough time for it to make its complete turn, let that fly line ride itself back down again before the next strip, it is always going to stay dead even and it won't head bob on you. But if you strip it faster than that line has a chance to get below the head of the fly, yes, it will ride back up on you every time. So you almost got it, it's breaking it down to be probably a little too much of the nth degree. But if you understand where that fly line is, you've got to be thinking, where is my fly line with the fly and fish the fly? Because if you're just fishing strips in your hand, the fly can only do so much because now you're taking in a lot of different things. You're taking in the turbulence of the water. You're taking in the weight of you're just taking in so many different things. It's hard to put out.
Yep.
But if you keep that line at a level of the fly or below it, that fly is always going to work true and the same. And like myself, I'll lean over the edge of the boat and bury my hand the whole way down to the core. If I'm 6 foot of water and I can get that rod tip to 6 foot, I'm going to try ramming that thing down as far as I can. That's going to keep that fly riding completely true and never want to pull itself up out. And I've hooked fish below the boat and watched them come up the depth finder. And that fly was still working a foot off the bottom at that point.
Yep. No doubt. And
so as long as you understand like where that line's at with it, it's definitely going to make the fly consistently ride the way that it should without ever the fly not wanting to raise or do anything. It's always going to stay right there.
I love that. And just because we're going through so much, just like to summarize a little bit, I think one point, people that are fishing your flies or buying your flies know a little bit more about what the desired action is going to be and how you can use the strip to make that happen. But then also for the folks, it is fly tying season, right? You can change all of that. I remember I did it kind of accidentally when I started tying flies. Like I just couldn't tie a Buford head consistently. So I had 12 different versions of them. And then I saw 12 different movements. Like you can go out there and just mess around with it.
Yep. That's the fun part.
Yeah. Find a different situation that needs a different tool for the job. So, just a quick note before we keep moving. Excuse me.
Doubles. One thing too. Doubles fish just like a lake will. You fish them the same. We did skip that part.
We're going to go into doubles here in a second, but just
okay,
for folks,
never mind. Keep going.
Pay attention. If you do have questions you want answered, click the Q&A button. It's separate from the chat. We just can keep track of it a little bit better, and we'll make sure we get through all of those. We're trying to keep up with them as we go, but it's a little bit more difficult in the chat. Thank you. Doubles. So let's hit on doubles. I'd love to touch on briefly like platform construction, kind of how you're connecting the dots, and then just kind of hear you generally talk about it a little bit more. Movement, action, etc. Time of year, when you're using it. So go ahead.
I guess before we hit on that, let's hit on what we just did real quick though, because the one question that came across the bottom. Yeah, I get what you're saying about it kind of dying up, but I'm not looking for the dying minnow at that point. I'm looking for the minnow swimming away, trying to get away from them, and the fish to eat that. If I'm looking for the dying minnow kind of head bobbing time of the year, that's right now when I'm throwing a float line and I'm drifting flies down through there. Yep. At that point, yeah, I'm not looking for that fish to really be dying. I'm looking for it to be swimming and kind of give it like a little bit of an erratic action, like it's injured. Hence, like the pop, 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 and then let it just go ahead and turn. I'm kind of giving that injured movement, like it's wanting to get away, and it's like, I see you there, but I can't get away fast enough. And then if you can get him engaged 20 foot outside the boat and see him at that point, you can really just kind of pop and work him. And then as soon as he gets broadside, strip it fast and go fast into the 8, and then you can get fish to engage that way. So I guess, yeah, I get where you're coming from on that, but I'm kind of looking for it as more of a injured, I'm trying to get away, than more of a dying type bait fish.
But you could theoretically still work your flies in that dying type way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just strip it a little bit quicker and keep, or even use an intermediate and keep the fly line above the head of the fly. Then it's going to want, yeah, it'll pop right up. 100%. Yeah. But so with doubles, they are on 2 PR326 odds. I like the 2 hook construction because I do find if I use shanks, I've never found a way to keep them from over a period of time like locking up on themselves. So it seems to me like every 8 or 10 times they'll want to like lock, and then you're stuck with it and it doesn't, then you got to get it back in and fix it. I use 2 strands of 65-pound wire. So they're as bulletproof as I can get them. And it's just constructed the same way. It is tied, stacked. There's probably about 6 stacks on the back, very sparse. And I keep them sparse and I keep them start going up a little bit. So they're tapered up through. And then I run my 65-pound with 1 8mm bead. And I try to run that up to where it's almost sitting and riding and tapping that back hook. And then I'll run 1 big fat straight layer back over top to kind of hold all that so it blends it all together. Then stack it on top and do a lake head on the front of it. And that thing just glides and swims. And as you know, in black over orange, Wisconsin musky love it.
I think I got one of them right here. I'm going to have to hold on to this one.
That fish is great on even anything from like a 450 up to whatever. I mean, you can easily fish it on a 10 weight and a 450, easily.
Yeah, they're really light. I mean, you can tell you're being specific about the materials because it's still easily a 12-inch fly, and it's light.
Everything serves a purpose with what I do. I mean, I look at, okay, when I tie a different fly or I bring a new pattern out, it's because I have a void that nothing's filling. So everything in it serves a purpose. I don't want to put too much stuff in there because I want my materials to flow and I want them to breathe. And I still think regardless of what you're fishing for, the better that fly breathes, the better it moves, the better it swims, the better action it has, you're going to catch more fish. Sparsely tied fly that swims good in 5-6 inches is going to catch a lot more fish than a bulky, over-tied 8-10 inch musky fly. It's just, I mean, as long as that action's there, they're gonna swim.
Yep. I got one for you on this topic, Mark, just to clarify, and then we're gonna hit a few from the audience. But so you mentioned that the double is the lake head on the Buford.
Mm-hmm.
You still fish it in rivers, or is that just?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can fish. You fish the lake head in rivers too.
But the weight of that fly, because it's bigger, kind of gets itself down, and you don't need the
Fish it with a full sink line. That's all. Yep. Awesome. Yeah, I fish them both. I mean, even the lake heads. There's times I'll fish a lake, and what I'll do is I'll fish it in the same situation as a river, but I'll fish it with a full sink, because what I'm going to do is I'm trying to just get it to hover over top of where that tree line is on the opposite side. And then at that point, I'm just going to work it back to me up high. So I'm trying to keep it from diving down into where the tree limbs are or what have you, or whatever I'm trying not to get it stuck into. But one thing too is you can, I guess, like with a lake or a riverhead that's nice, is let's say you are wading or you're in a scenario where you have a tree downstream a little bit. You can throw on an angle to a little bit above, upstream, mend it, let that fly sit down in a second, strip it out, and you're going to get 8-10 foot of perfect broadside fishing across that log with that fly before it gets out where you're down below you. So that's one nice thing is you can take a Buford head and fish that and work that just like a glide bait right in front of that log, just by, because it's able to get down with an intermediate.
Yep.
Kind of way off where we were talking about.
No,
But yeah,
that's good. And we should,
as long as you think of where the line's going to be and what it's going to be doing, any of the flies are usable in any of the situations.
yeah. How are you? We're basically gonna get to questions right here because we got a lot piling up and we got, what do we have? 15 minutes left, a little bit more. But I just want to kind of hit on a few last ones for me before we get into everybody else's. Yeah, me first. I go. Turn. How are you actually, other than double wire, how are you tying the wire down? Are you seeing any durability issues at all? Or you said bulletproof earlier, but how are you hearing that?
I'm going to put a full thread base on there.
Yeah.
Glue it. So thread base, glue, wire, glue, wire, glue.
Yeah. So you're doing one wire.
In 3 years, I have had yet one to fall apart that way. At some point, I'm sure one will.
Yeah.
So if one has, nobody's told me. And if you did, tell me. Send me a picture. I'll send you another fly because that should never happen. Jake scared the crap out of me. I know you're watching. So he immediately buys one. Then orders another one. He's like, yeah, I had a failure. I was like, dude, what happened? How did the fly fall apart? I've never had one fall apart. Oh, no, it ate up above the wire and like completely ate everything. Oh, okay. But yeah, if you do it that way, and with the dual, and I tell you what, if you have single coated 65, it is equally as good as AFW straight 65 non-coated in 2. And I've yet to find that has failed at all. I mean, and again, if it has, I don't know, but it has never that I know of using that method.
Yeah. It's
held extremely good. So, and I believe with that wire, the nice part is instead of it, so like with Not Too Kinky, that's going to slide in there. This compresses. So once you put that thread dam on or that thread layer on, you put the glue on, you're pressing, it's pulling down into that. So it's adhering, and it's essentially just fusing itself, and it's just one big fusion. By the time you put 4 glue layers on there and pull, and 150 GSP, yank on that. I mean, I'll show you my graveyard of bobbins up above here. I break a bobbin once a month.
I'm going on 2 months, just by the way, no broken bobbins. That's a pretty good streak for me. Normally it was one. That half
you're lucky.
That half pitch is holding up. No,
I envy you. Yeah.
I'd say that and she'll bust tomorrow.
Yeah, they're all racked up. I need to. Maybe someone listening
has. You gotta be the guinea pig. You got to be the guinea pig for the next right bobbin that wants to call themselves.
I am. I went this way, and so far this thing hasn't proved yet. If I break this, I'm doing well.
Yeah. That one's a good bomb. That was a good one. We're getting off topic. Last one for me, then we're going to get through everybody's. Just like 120 seconds on the Dragon Tails. I loved how you talked about these earlier, kind of like, why are you using them? What differences do you see it make ultimately in fishing outcomes? But
I don't like fishing synthetics. I really just don't prefer them at all. And I found that this was one of the things that really filled a void. And it has a purpose because it works. And that's why it's one of the only synthetics that I do use. When nothing else is working and no fish are moving, that seems to trigger them. In really, really high, bright scenarios where typically it's extremely hard to move a fish because they can see everything. It's shallow, it's bright, or it's just complete, just bright open skies and it's clear. Like the holographic tails will get their attention and it'll get them hot. And I found that they flat out work. I don't fish them all the time, but when there's days that I just can't get any activity from fish, XL, that question. I like the XLs. The double XLs seem to pull and they want to drag more, where the XL works great with a lake head on a single and a double. It still has the same action. The fish is just as good side to side and it doesn't pull them back. but I do find that they really work in certain scenarios very well. I've fished with quite a few people that use them regularly. They work just as good. It's just a lot of preference to me. I prefer to use them when it's kind of like the last case scenario, or it's really like a tough day. I know I'm going to go to one of them in a holographic, but I've watched them equally fish just as good.
Yeah, they're pretty crazy, and we don't have them for people that are asking. You can get them at a few spots. I know Nightmare's got them. Most local fly shops have them. We'll hopefully have our hands on them soon, but they are pretty sweet. Just one more on that. How are you connecting them? What's your kind of setup? And then
I run.
Get to everyone else's questions.
The only time I will use that. I'm very blunt with that because I do not like this stuff for connection at all. That, and then I'm going to put a loop with one of these little, whatever they, sleeves, crimp it on, and then to a wee little tiny fast hatch, and then you can turn them on. So even though I don't provide extra tails with it, you can go purchase. Yeah, you can exchange them. Yep.
Which is another side benefit, obviously.
Yeah, it's not tied straight onto it, so you can.
Yep. All right. Let's see what we got here. Mark, this has been awesome. Actually, before we go into questions, because we'll just close out with questions. Where can we hear more about you, get more flies, listen to the podcast? Like, what's the plug? What's coming up for 2021?
So to hear more, always on SVS. We're on there almost every week. We're interviewing someone. We're always talking about the fishing that's going on. I don't get too much into the time, but from time to time we do. The website, Urban Fly Company. There's a lot going on, so keep your eyes peeled. We're only a couple weeks away from a lot of stuff launching on there. So there's going to be some new flies, but there's going to be quite a few other things going on there too.
Well, that's sweet. We're pumped. We're pumped to hear that. I've been noticing the updates. It's been like every time you click on that, you get a couple more flies, a couple more changes. It looks a little tighter. I love it. But, we'll have to stay tuned for what's coming down the pipe.
Oh, yeah. I'm keeping my web guy busy right now.
Yeah, are you? Good. Good for you. Good for you. All right, sip a beer. Questions. Let's see what we got. We'll just do some quick ones here. Do you use Bucktail for the bodies of flies?
Yes.
Yes. The answer is yes. Really quality Bucktail. Looks like this one's from Gabe. I remember seeing some of your flies a while back that had dumbbell eyes tied on the back of the hook shank near the bend. What effect did that have on your fly, and do you still use that method for any reason or situation?
Oh, I remember them flies. I do not take claim to them. I have never put them.
Was that some Sully?
If that was on SVS, that was Chad. If that would have been on this, that would have been Sully. Yeah, but no, I do, and I've watched them swim that way. They do fine. They do well. I don't know if it really makes that big of a difference, but I've seen them swim. Yeah.
Matt's coming up from Adaptive in 2 weeks, and he puts a little bit of the rear weighting on his. We'll get a little bit more of that on that one.
Help jackknife them a little better.
Yep. Do you have a favorite kind of wire for connections? You talked a little bit about that. You just want to hit it again?
Yeah. That one. 65-pound AFW.
Yep.
That is my favorite.
Yep. Mike Small, can you describe how you string the double wire? I think we hit on that, Mike. Let me know if we didn't.
One thing I do too with the 65, like the single or wait for double stranding, the non-coated, when you cut it, put a little bit of glue on the end. It'll help you significantly just to seal them ends in. So when you put them beside each other to tie, it's a lot easier. When you go to run them through your beads in the second hook, that little bit of glue is a godsend, or it becomes a nightmare. It'll start splintering on you.
And folks, we'll also try and thank you for that, Mark. We'll try and post all the products we're talking about here. We don't have all of them. We're gonna have American Fishing Wire soon, but you can get them. You can get them all over this place. I know people are asking.
So these.
What do we got there?
Oh, that is the
vendors.
Yeah, the snap-on wire cutter. So if you know a technician or you know a mechanic, have them get you a pair.
What is the deal here? Is this like some underground wire cutter trade that we don't have access to?
No, like it's well, as you heard earlier with my job situation, I used to be at a place where I had access to them. and they make the
Plug's
best wire
gone.
cutters. Huh?
The plug's gone.
Yeah, they make the best wire cutters.
Oh, that's good. Let's see, what do we got? Chris
Yeah.
Sims, just really quick, how's a double really gonna fish different than a single Buford for you, or is it really just about size is the difference?
Size. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. That's all. Yep. Time of year.
Yep.
I fish shingles I fish shingles probably 80% of the time.
Yep. Does Mark offer any YouTube videos demonstrating his tying techniques?
I don't yet. I've been asked a lot, but I haven't got. At some point, maybe now things are starting to open up over this next year. I'd really like to get engaged a lot more because I have had so many people reach out and stuff like this, and having the ability to do things like this. And I'm now gonna probably be able to have a little more time to do that. Yeah, and I hope to. From what I understand, there's gonna be a few people that have asked to come and video me doing things. So if they're willing to work with that and put some stuff up, I'd be glad to.
Well, consider us fans and wanting that as well. So, yeah, that's sweet. Here we go. Let's see. I can't read these that well. Sorry, I got to zoom in. I fish an extremely clear lake with 16-foot depth and 16 foot of water clarity. I find that I can locate and move more fish, but can hardly ever get them to commit to an eat. Any suggestions or techniques that could be tried in this scenario? A little bit of a general musky question. What do you got?
All black, silver flash, red throat. Try to get the fish to engage out at like 20, 25, 30 foot. And actually, probably more than like 20. Keep it at the 20-foot range. And as soon as you do, get that fly to turn broadside. And as the fish comes up to it, you're going to just give it like a pop, 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 pop real quick. And if that fish comes quick with it, couple hard strips and then go fast into the 8 and get him to come with it and go hard fast with it. If you go pop, 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 and that fish just kind of barely scoots up behind it, just pick the fly up and cast again. You're not going to get him to eat. You try to get him to engage far enough out that you can work him into the 8 and get speed. So as soon as he gets that first one, if he comes in fast, as soon as he comes in fast, don't even let it turn broadside again. Just keep going fast with it so you can get probably 2 more strips at that point. So if you figure like a pop, pop, pop gets it broadsides a few feet, couple good strips. Yeah, I mean, if you're in that 15 to 20 foot range, you can see them at, start there and do something like that. Maybe a little closer, around 12 to 18.
What are, kind of building on that, what are you doing in terms of fly color or size if you got really clear gin water situations?
I like black and clear and gin water or white over chartreuse.
Yep.
No, and that's in a lot of the clear water I deal with. That's the scenarios I try to put in. If I can't get to where I'm putting my fly to where I really can't see the fish eat, I'm trying to get them to where I can engage them 20 foot or less in the boat so I can get them into the figure 8. And I think like them flies, them colors there are the ones more than anything I've had the most success with. I mean, naturals, I've got them to, kind of work okay with like bluegills and perch and stuff like that. But realistically, in clear water, black, I love it always. Just, black or.
Are you noticing you got to do anything different with size? Because I've noticed that a little bit, at least with some of our waters. When we get really clear, depending the watersheds, we got to size down quite a bit. What about you?
Well, one thing is, though, that I'm going to be it's tough for me to answer that because the forage food I'm fishing at is consistently in them watersheds 7-8 inches. So I'm consistently fishing 7 to 8 inch because that's all they're eating all day.
All year long?
So, yeah, all year long. It doesn't matter. That's almost a consistent bait fish. One, they're either eating consistently shad and perch. The other one, they're eating perch and bluegill. So if you're in an area where you may be getting big Cisco's and stuff like that, then black over orange on that question.
Yeah, I was about to ask. We got 2 of those. There you go.
Yeah. But so I guess
that confidence color in Pennsylvania, just for everyone listening, black over orange.
Oh, in Pennsylvania is black. That was tannic water. Whoever asked that one.
Oh.
The one for tannic water, black over orange. But for PA, yes, straight black always. That's my favorite color. Period. Straight black.
Confidence for
PA.
Got it. Yep.
Little bit of I like to add in like hues of like blue and purple, or that one for clear water. That's my favorite. Black, red throat, silver tail underneath the black feathers, silver flash under the black feathers. That is my favorite, hands down, in clear water. Yep.
What else do we got here? Good questions. We got one from Tyler. What is your? I assume he means fly style. What's kind of your favorite pattern to be fishing in the rivers? Is it your river Bufords, your minnows? Do you have a favorite pattern? It's kind of
No, it's probably the minnow actually more than anything, to be honest with you, that I do a lot of. I've been tweaking a lot of things, so I haven't really been settled on one lately. But when it's like, okay, I need to do this, yeah. When I'm on a lake, no, single Buford, single lake all day long. That's my confidence. That's my go-to. Unless I'm fishing up in maybe like a shallow sandy spot, then I'm going to go to a riverhead where it's only like 2-3 feet, so I can fish it on an intermediate and kind of work it slow through there. But for a lot of the rivers, I fish a lot of minnows because they get down right now and they're right in that zone. And I want to get that fish to eat. Like, it's tough in rivers because they're so heavily pressured that it's a crapshoot when you get them in the 8 what they're going to do. I've seen them go 15, 20 rounds just to turn and leave for no reason after like 2 minutes of figure 8 with them, just because they just don't. It's just they're so pressured. If I can get them to eat quicker in some of these spots, like myself I'm at, it's better. And that fly, it seems to fill the void of where I'm at.
interesting. What are you? We don't have any more. I don't think that I missed. Did I, Jen? Question was. But we have like time for maybe one more. Yeah, keep sending them. But what you got me going here? What are you? You've talked about it a couple times. Does it stay the same all the time, or do you have different techniques for your figure 8? Like this is kind of going off the fly topic, but you've mentioned it now a couple times. What's your?
And I think one thing
for your 8s or your ovals.
Yeah, and one thing too that we got hit is there's a lot of water we fish here. So when I'm talking like rivers and creeks, I'm ranging anywhere from, I'll fish musky in creeks that are 30, 40 foot wide to bigger rivers. Some of it I'm walking and wading. Some of it we're in drift boats, what have you. But so there's a lot of variance.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be, it's not gospel by any stretch of the imagination. But so let's say the place that I do the most figure 8ing, a majority, I want that fish engaged prior to the bank. And when I mean engaged, I want him either coming with the fins flapping or I want him coming in like with speed to it. And like myself, I don't really get flustered with it because of the fact it's kind of fun. I get to learn from that scenario. So I'm more excited. Once the fish eats and I hook him at that point, I'm kind of like, I'm good. I lay down, I slide him in the net. Most of the time I don't even like to fight him. Get him in, get him. Because I like the learning aspect of playing with him in the 8. And in that scenario, you can do a lot more with that fish if he's engaged prior. If he comes in slow and you get speed into him and you get him to go then, he's just going to sit and jack around and play with it and just play and play. You'll do the 8, you'll slap it back down. He'll turn around, he'll come in, he'll do the 8 again. He'll slap it down, he'll come in, kind of look at it 4 or 5 times later. And then you let him settle, come back 45 minutes later, and you get him 15 foot out. And then you take them in hot and you get them speed up into that 8, and then you hang it real quick, high right. He's going to eat right there. You drop your rod tip to his face, and then. So if you can get them to do that, they're almost always going to eat first time high right. But if you're going to sit and play with them with pressured fish, pressured fish are just so hard on the 8 to do. And I've been spooked by them where they just come out from underneath the boat and they'll nip at it and stuff, and them ones are always hard. But the best thing I can say with a figure 8 is don't back yourself in a corner with it. Don't come in really hot. Like if you're double handing, make sure you know when you're going to drop that rod out of your hand and go ahead and take it with the left one. At what point, where is that fly going to be? So I know once I start swooping, that's where that fish is going to be going. So make sure you're thinking in your head. Because a lot of people get so excited as soon as they see that fish, everything else stops. Try to be, okay, the fly's coming, here's where it's going to be, here's what I'm going to do because I'm going to get the fly to here. So then when that fish turns, if he eats here, all I have to do is drop my rod tip down with my right hand to his face, make 2 strips, it's tight, 3rd strip, he's eating, I'm rolling him back over his head. So as long as you're thinking that way through, if you freeze at that, you're kind of like, you back yourself to where as soon as it gets in, then you're trying to like, pop, 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 what's he going to do? And then go into an 8, and then the fish is just he's going to play with you. Get him to engage and get him to work that fly 15 so foot out if you can.
there's a lot of good info in that little bit from you right there. We're gonna have to deep dive into eights at another point in time, my friend.
Man, you just gotta like be patient. That's just it. And I know it's hard to say, and I've fished with so many people that get so excited when they see that fish, but try to like look at that opportunity how do I get this fish not to eat the fly? Try to make it a game and have fun with it, because the more fun you have and you get that fly just an inch in front of his face, the more you're going to learn, the more relaxed you're going to be, because you're going to find out he's going to eat the fly because you're still not getting it as fast as you think you are. He will still eat that fly. Play cat and mouse with them, and it builds a lot of esteem so that when them fish start coming in, you can read them, because everyone's going to be different. I mean, there's fish I've came back on. I've got him in an 8. I made a couple turns, and I lifted the fly up out of the water, and I left. 30 minutes later, I came back. The fish came out, kind of looked at it like, and kind of settled on it and dropped back. Came back a half hour later, never even got to the bank. Boom, the fish just crushed it. You can tell that their tendencies of it, and it's just they're going to turn at some point. And you can learn a lot from a fish in a figure 8. You can learn that he will eat at some point. I can't tell you how many that I've left and came back and they have ate.
Yeah, it's so true.
So the more time you can engage with that fish and you can stay settled with it, the more it's going to help just with every fish you see.
Yep. I think that's it. We got any more time?
That's awesome. What last question?
Oh, we got
really
yeah, we got an important one from Mr. Dustin. Okay. Does Chad wash his legs yet?
That's a good one. Yeah.
I think that answers
Who
it.
Knows? Who knows?
What did I miss?
Knowing him, no.
Yeah. So we just got here. We'll end on this one. It's a good. Which for smaller rivers, are you sticking to wire? Are you going fluoro? What's your leader bite guard setup?
I don't ever go to fluoro. I'm not against it. I'm not one that's going to sit here and preach on you and say, you're going to get bit off at some point. You may. I don't know. I haven't, but I've never used it enough to tell you it has or not. I always run, I will drop down to 40-pound wire. And I've not had it snap. I mean, not like Rio Intermediate does. I mean, you can break them lines like a lot quicker than you can a 40-pound wire.
The show is proudly brought to you by Real Lines.
You know what the bad part is? I still got 3 of them.
They cast well, dude. I know.
I don't get more. I don't keep fishing because it is the best doggone intermediate tapered line.
For like a week.
Yeah, for a week. But I will go to 40-pound wire, lakes and everything else. I stick to 65.
Sweet.
Yep.
They're talking about wire in the chat. We'll post some of that.
I don't mono, fluoro, anything like that for pike, though. I know we're not, a lot of people are pike haters out there, but I have had a lot of pike get straight through fluoro.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got one question here from Anonymous. Ideal rod weight for the minnow single? I mean, I'm looking at it right now. You could easily throw this with an 8 weight. You could probably bomb it with a 10 weight. What's your call, Mark? Ideal rod weight for these?
I prefer a 10 just because I like the setup of it. If you're comfortable fishing them with a 9 or you can do that, yeah, you can fish them with a 9, but you don't need any more than a 10. You can throw them on an 8.
Yeah.
I prefer a 10.
Yeah. That wasn't a comment as to like what you should fish muskies for, but what you could cast this on.
Oh, realistically, you could cast on a 7 or an 8 weight.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I do. I mean, I'll throw them for bass on a 7 weight. So when I'm fishing like largemouth in the spring and I got my daughter on a boat and she's casting for pike or whatever, I'll work river styles on a 7 weight for largemouth. Yep. They cast them just fine. No problem at all.
Sweet. Well, I think that's it, buddy.
Cool. That was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us. We always get through these, at least so far, and just unearth like 400 other topics we want to talk about. So.
That's good. Yeah, we went down a lot of rabbit holes there.
Yeah, we'll have to get you back on here and do some more.
Heck yeah. That was fun.
Yeah. All right, everybody. It was great to have
Derek.
you on. Thanks, Mark. Everyone else, thanks for joining. Have a wonderful night. We'll talk to you later.
Appreciate it. Thanks, all. Thank you.